Good evening and welcome. I'd like to call the March 5th City of Issaquah's Development Commission meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. As a reminder, we have a remote aspect to our meetings. This means both staff and members of the public may be participating in the meeting remotely via WebEx. For those attending remotely, if you have questions or issues, please send the host a chat message or email staff at kristenl@issaquah.gov. Excused absence for this meeting tonight is Commissioner Gilbert. Our first item of business is to take action on the meeting minutes for January 15th. Hope we've had a chance to look them over. Are there any corrections to the January 15th minutes in the agenda packet? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as submitted. Next, I'd like to open the floor for any members of the public in person or virtually who would like to make a general comment, not about the Madison Lane Townhomes project, but on general topics. There will be an opportunity later in the meeting for those who'd like to comment about the project on tonight's agenda. Ms. Jackson, has anybody signed up to make general public comments?
No, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We'll roll on into regular business and our main agenda item for the evening, pre-decision open record public hearing. The order for this hearing will be as follows. First, the purpose of the public hearing, followed by our appearance of fairness disclosures. Then we'll open the public hearing with a staff presentation, followed by an applicant presentation. Then we'll open the floor for public comment. There'll be an opportunity for rebuttal by applicant and then staff, and then we'll close the public hearing. Commission deliberation will then be followed by action, including motions, amendments, and vote, and that will conclude the agenda item on the quasi-judicial permit. If for any reason the hearing can't be completed this evening, it may be continued to a specified date. Purpose of this hearing, this is the formal public hearing for the Madison Lane Townhomes development. The proposal being considered is a preliminary plat and site development permit application for an 11-unit residential development divided between two buildings located at 800 Front Street South. The purpose of the hearing is to solicit public comment and facilitate review, discussion, and decision on the application by the Development Commission. This is a quasi-judicial hearing. And so, Ms. Medina, please proceed with our appearance of fairness disclosures.
Thank you, Chair Sanford. All right, good evening, Commissioners. We'll start with the appearance of fairness. So, as Chair Sanford said, quasi-judicial decisions require proceedings to be fair in fact and appearance. Ex parte contacts are prohibited. And the test is, would a disinterested person knowing the totality of a decision maker's personal interest in a matter be reasonably justified in thinking that partiality may exist? Decision makers who have personal interest, prejudgment of issues, or partiality are disqualified from the proceedings. So I'm going to go through the questions for the Commissioner, and I'm going to stop at the end of each question and get your response as we go through these. Each of the Commissioners can just respond out loud as we go through. Do you have a personal interest, financial or otherwise, in the outcome?
No.
Does your employer have an interest, financial or otherwise, in the outcome?
No.
Do you have any familial, social, or business relationships or connections with any of the parties or non-parties who have an interest in the outcome?
No.
Do you have any special knowledge about the substantive or the merits of this proceeding which would or could cause you to prejudge the outcome?
No.
Will there be any prospective employment for you or your family as a result of the decision?
No.
Do you own or control property within 300 feet of the subject property?
No.
Do you have any ex parte communications regarding this project?
No.
Do you believe you can sit and hear this matter fairly and impartially, both as to the respective positions of the proponents and the opponents of this matter?
Yes.
Questions for the audience. Does anyone in attendance wish to challenge the participation of any commissioner based on the appearance of fairness doctrine? Thank you. All right, I'm going to pass out our design boards.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll open the public hearing at 6:37 PM. First, we'll proceed with staff's presentation. So, Ms. Medina, while you're up there, I will need to swear you in. Please state your name and position with the city for the record.
Emily Medina, Associate Planner with the Community Development.
Do you swear by oath or affirmation the testimony you're about to provide is true?
Yes.
Thanks. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Sanford. So as has been said, today we are here to talk about the Madison Lane Townhomes. There's two aspects to this proposal. This is the preliminary plat 24-0001 and the site development permit 24-0008. This is located at 800 Front Street South and is in the Old Town sub-area. It is zoned MFH, which is multifamily high, and it is land use designated as multifamily residential. I'm just going to grab my note. So the summary of this proposal is it's 2 3-story buildings, 11 residential units total. There's common amenity space at the rear of the site, water, sewer, stormwater, and frontage improvements, and an internal access drive, which is entered on off of Front Street. So the site zoning for this site is the density allowed is 29 dwelling units per acre. The site is 0.7 acres, so a total of 20 units would be permitted on site, but 11 units are proposed, meeting the density requirement for the site beneath the maximum allowed. Site and building design, all the architectural elements adhere to the standards, both within the site and building design sections of our code. Buildings are oriented towards the adjacent transportation facilities. All the main entries face the sidewalks, and each unit has its own separate entry. Each unit has weather protection at its entrance. There's ground level transparency provided throughout the development, and there's no blank wall that extends longer than 30 feet. Design elements are repeated, as you can see in the exhibit there, with modulation and changes in materials, window patterns and colors provided. You can see up close of those materials on the sample boards going around. And then the end units on either side of this development, which is unit 1 and 11, face the street and the park respectively. Parking meets all of the requirements. The residential requirements is 13 to 22 spaces allowed and 22 are proposed. 1 motorcycle space is required and 1 is proposed. For bicycle spaces, there was no short-term requirement for this, given its location and use. And then for long-term, 11 are required and 11 are proposed. These long-term spaces are within each unit's garage. Landscaping and trees. So the whole site perimeter has type 3 landscaping around it. There's specific requirements for type 3 landscaping, and this includes 30% evergreen and be required throughout, and they are exceeding that with 54% proposed. It is also required that there be 1 tree per 5,000 square feet of required landscaping, and this is far exceeded with 1 tree per 123 square feet of landscaping proposed. There's a pathway at the rear of the property. You can see this kind of just to the south of the play area. This extends all the way back to the rear property line with wood chips proposed for the pathway. There is a condition recommended regarding this that I will get into at the end of this presentation. This meets the green necklace amenity requirement as this site abuts the Rainier Trail property. That is required. For trees, it's a 35% retention requirement, which would be 182 diameter at breast height inches, and 270 are proposed. Canopy coverage is required at 33%, which would be 9,892 square feet, and this is exceeded by a total of 26,385 square feet proposed. So this site is required to provide community and amenity spaces. There is, given 11 units, that means 1,100 square feet is required and 1,490 square feet is proposed. That's what's at the rear of the site. There is some passive area as well as a play area and benches. 30% of amenity space is required to be landscaping. This is currently not met with how this is proposed. But this could be easily met by expanding the amenity space to include the area to the right. This was just a miscommunication between the applicant and I of what could be counted. So it is conditioned to meet that, and I would expect them to be able to easily meet that when they come in for construction permitting. We require 11 seating units for the amenity area, and 12 are proposed. And then 48 square feet per unit of private outdoor amenity space, which is proposed with a balcony for each unit. There's 2 wayfinding locations proposed throughout the site. And then unit 11 is oriented towards the Rainier Trail. So that end unit on the east side of the property, it faces out and provides eyes on the community amenity area and just has that interaction with the park area. So for Old Town design standards, similar to, oh, Kristen, you blocked my. The front entries are pedestrian-oriented and include weather protection and the required architectural features. This includes things like lighting, variety of paving, patios, low walls, and landscape borders. Front street transparency is required at 15%, so that's the eye level on the first level would require 15% be windows, and 23% is proposed. And then the buildings do not contain more than 3 main colors. I seem to have lost control of the main screen. Who's ever pulling up the attendees sheet seems to be controlling. Oh, there we go. Sorry, the attendee sheet was over top of my presentation. So that covers the site development permit and code review, and then the preliminary plat code review. So this is a consolidated review because the preliminary plat is a level 3 review through the city, and the site development permit is a level 4. They get consolidated as only 1 public hearing is allowed to be had when there's 2 permits. And so you consolidate into the highest level of review, which is level 4, before the Development Commission for review and decision. So for preliminary plat review, the plat includes required and appropriate provisions for utilities, streets, open space, and drainage ways. It meets all applicable IMC standards. Maintenance agreements will be recorded with the final plat, which is specified as recommended condition number 3. And then all of the lots are developable. There's no reasonable use exception going to be required for this. And then all the unit lot subdivision criteria are met, which are further broken down in the staff report. SEPA review happened in March, and a determination of non-significance was issued. 3 comments were received that staff responded to. They are included in your packet as Exhibit U, I believe. The DNS was issued as all impacts will be mitigated through code requirements and the conditions on this approval or the Commission's decision. So following the publishing of my staff report, the applicant provided some comments about 2 of the conditions that the city was receptive to and agreed that some revisions to the condition should happen. So condition number 5, wood chips for pedestrian pathway. That's what we talked about on the south for the green necklace amenity. When I originally wrote the condition, it was proposed to have a requirement that the wood chips be kept in usable condition and replenished annually, and specifically state that on the face of the plat, as well as the maintenance agreement within the CC&Rs. And I've revised that to be more general, that a requirement for maintenance of the pedestrian pathway shall be stated on the face of the final plat and reference a maintenance agreement within the CC&Rs. So just making it a little more general, so it's simple on the face of the plat that the pedestrian pathway is just to be maintained, and then the CC&Rs can get into the specifics of what that looks like. Just in case down the line, if we move from wood chips to something else, we don't have to do a plat amendment to not allow them to do wood chips. But staff is recommending that maintenance of the pedestrian pathway specifically exist on the face of the plat, as that allows the city to have enforceability that the path be maintained as it is required to meet that green necklace amenity code requirement. And then the second is condition 12. And it's just a little rewording of the second sentence that instead of having to provide documentation demonstrating compliance, that the applicant shall notify our department of actions taken pursuant to this condition to ensure compliance. And this is just in case nothing needs to be done, there wouldn't be any evidence to show. So it's just making sure that we're not backing the applicant into a corner that isn't fair for them to get out of. So that was run by our engineering department, and they agreed that the revision to the condition made sense. Thank you. Let me know if there's any questions.
Questions on staff's presentation? Commissioner Brennan.
Mr. Just really quick procedural question. So this is a level 4 approval, permit approval?
Correct.
So it's for both the site development permit and the preliminary plat? Okay, good, thank you.
Just a general timing question. So SEPA permit issued last March, and we're now in March of ~25. Is that just kind of how long it takes to go through the whole process?
Correct. So
Yeah.
for this permit, we issued what's known as the optional DNS process. So the SEPA determination was issued with the notice of application, so it was a combined notice. So it was issued pretty early on in the process, which is what the state prefers if we can do it. So the process for SDP and PP approval takes about a year. So that's just about what the timeline takes.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? I have several, but they're really on the staff report in detail. So I think I'm going to save them for a little bit later during deliberation time. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we will proceed with the applicant's presentation. I will need to swear you in. Please state your name for the record.
Peter Durland. I'm an attorney for the applicant.
Thank you. Do you swear by oath or affirmation the testimony you're about to provide is true?
I do.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Peter Durland, as I just said, and I'm the attorney for the applicant. With me is Hussein Mansouri, who is our project manager. He's going to explain some more of the project details for you. Other members of our team include our civil engineer, Jamie Schroeder, our architect, Travis McDonald, and our entitlements manager, Raylan Holquist. They're online. They won't be part of our presentation, but they're here to answer any of your questions if you have them. As city staff has already provided a lot of the project details, we're going to kind of supplement some of their findings here. Before we begin, just wanted to take a minute to note the approval criteria that's before you today. As staff noted, it's a consolidated level 4 permit review for site development permit and the preliminary plat. Basically, we're just here to ensure the project complies with all requirements under code. As the staff noted in the report and presentation, applicant complies with all the applicable regulations under code, and we respectfully ask that you approve the project subject to conditions. We'll get into the 2 conditions that we mentioned before. We have a slight difference with staff on condition 5, but completely agree about condition 12. So with that, I'll turn it over to Hussein to explain the project.
Good evening, Commissioners. First of all, I would like to thank you for all just attending today's meeting. And I believe now it's time for me just to swear.
Okay. We will also, yes, and could you repeat your name, please, for the record?
My name is Hussein Mansouri.
And do you swear by oath or affirmation the testimony you're about to provide is true?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please proceed.
My presentation will likely be shorter than what Emily presented right now, and as she did a fantastic job covering all the keynotes and details of the project. However, I'm here to answer any questions you may have, and also have my team members. I have Jamie, our civil engineer here, and also, as Peter mentioned, we have Travis, architect, and our entitlement manager, Raylan, just joined online for more detailed questions if you guys have any. Can you just move up to the next one? And the property is currently vacant, and when we first saw this, we recognized the opportunity to improve the property. this is and make this space into a place where people can live and own homes. Throughout the design process, we work closely with Emily and the city staff to ensure that the project aligns with the needs of the neighborhood while also complying with all necessary requirements per city code. Our goal has always been to create a product that feels like belonging to the neighborhood. Okay, next one. And as you can see from the site plan evolution slide, the project team has responded to all comments, suggestions, and requests made during the review process to develop a site plan that complies with the zoning codes and adheres to the guidelines set for the Old Town neighborhood. In response to the comments that we received from the city over the last year, we've made some key adjustments resulting in reducing the unit counts from 12 to 11. And the frontage improvement now includes the new 5-foot planter strips along the front street south behind the sidewalk, as well as a right-of-way dedication. And also, as you can see here, we do have the amenity space located on the eastern portion of the property. And also, we provided a pathway from the very end of the, close to the unit 11, all the way to the eastern property line to meet the connectivity because of the having the trail on the east side of the property. Next slide. And here is the final site plans. As you can see, we have 2 buildings, 11 units, total of 22 parking spaces and 1 guest parking, which can be designated as which will be designated as temp loading and unloading during a specific time during the day from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And all the units will be accessed from the front of the street, from front of the buildings, and except 2 units, Unit 1 will be accessed from the directly from the front street south, and Unit 11 will be accessed from the east side of the building, facing the amenity space. And also, we've made sure that this layout is pedestrian friendly with a clear connection from Front Street to the interior of the project, ensuring ease of access for all residents and visitors. Next slide, please. And you've seen the elevations before. This is the building elevations for Building A. And we've worked hard to ensure these designs fit within the code while also creating a project that we can be proud of. And I believe we struck a good balance between the design and the code compliance. Next one, please. And here is another couple of elevations for Building B, which is located on the interior side of the building, interior side of the site. And next slide, please. Here is 2 conditions that we would like to propose minor changes, and Peter can just take it from here. He's just going to go through the changes that we expect.
And I believe I'm still sworn in. So like I said before, condition 12, we agree this is the same language that you saw from the updated staff report. Our only contention for condition 5 is that it could lead to problems down the road if we include it on the plat. So that's the only thing that we'd like to remove there. We would still be required to maintain it in the CC&Rs because it's still a condition of this development. However, we just think it'd be a lot simpler to keep it off the final plat. It can lead to a lot of issues down the road. I've seen plats from many, many years ago come back up, and then the property changes, and then there's something else that you have to go through, such as a plat amendment, which can get kind of complicated. And so we just want to avoid that for any future owners. When I was looking through code, we think that IMC 18340-060D3 is generally how this is being implemented. The language there says joint use agreements and maintenance agreements as necessary to include on the face of the plat. We think the CC&R provision meets that standard, but that's the only change that we would have here. And happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Commissioner
Mr.
Brennan?
Chair, could you give the reference again, the code reference you just gave?
Sure,
for the plat con-
18 340 060 D3.
Thank you.
Yeah.
While we're looking that up, and we may come back to that question in a moment, we had some public comments regarding control of stormwater. In the staff report, this is section 13. There was a letter from Sammamish Plateau Water regarding the stormwater system, and a response to that in the staff report. And also in the ESA, there's, I guess that's page 236 of 1043. It says, based on site observations and a review of the topographic map, the overall gradient appears to slope slightly to the west of the property. Surface water drainage is expected to flow west, but your sheet A2 seems to show the opposite. I'm not sure. My overall question is, how can we ensure that runoff from pollution-generating impervious surface will be captured for bioretention? I wonder if you could talk, maybe this is not the appropriate time, or maybe someone else can speak to this. But can you walk through the bioretention and capture of impervious surface runoff for us, please, in the design?
Sure. So, yeah, I am not the expert on that, so I can't run through that for you. I will say, just on a procedural level, we did address that with the letter, and so that's part of the site conditions for approval here, but I can let our expert actually speak on that.
Thank you. And if you could please introduce yourself, and I'll swear you in.
My name is Jamie Schroeder. I am civil engineer with CPH Consultants.
Thanks. Do you swear by oath or affirmation the testimony you're about to provide is true?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
You'd mentioned the existing topo of the site. It does go east. I think that is a typo. I'm talking about going west. Because everything falls toward the trail, which is to that side. In general, the topo and the design of the road is going to fall to the west as well. So the pollution generating portion, which is the roadways, driveways, all that cars will drive on, that's going to surface drain. It basically goes to the south along a curb. There's a curb cut. And if you, let's see, I'm sorry. In the drainage plan, you can see there's a bioretention toward the end of the driveway, or toward the end of the drive aisle, and that's collecting all the surface drainage that's pollution generating.
I wonder if we could see the sheet that details the retention, the water retention. There's one sheet that specifically
Yeah, it would
focuses
be
on that.
sheet 6 of 22 in the plan.
Right.
Yeah, so as you can see on this, the track 99, what's it, 999, that includes the drive out, the main drive. The sidewalk is at grade as well, because all the driveways, to have a curb go up and down, there's just too many driveways real close. So the sidewalk is at grade, and then you have those driveways that go off to each individual unit. So the driveways would flow away from the buildings, getting back to that tract, and then flow to the west. And we basically pitch everything to the opposite side. It may go to the center. There's a CB that you can see. it says flow line a little bit to the right of your cursor there. But that's all flowing there, and all of that area collects and goes to the bioretention, which provides the water quality, which is an enhanced BMP for water quality.
Okay, and how about capture toward the back of the property?
That part is flowing back, so it actually kind of has a low point between the two buildings. So we will flow a portion of that back to the east. I'm sorry, to the west. So we're flowing away from Front Street to about the end of Unit 6. There's a catch basin in there. And then the remainder of that drive is going to come back to the west, and all that will collect in that CB and then go into the bioretention.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, can I have a quick follow-up question on that?
Yes,
I
please.
recall the letter that you're referring to from the Sammamish Water and Sewer folks was that discharging into the groundwater was their concern. And so this system still does that, is that correct?
Yeah, we're in a critical area, recharge area, and it's, I can't remember, I think it's split between a 1 and a 3, however that works with the map, but we're kind of on the border of it. But part of those conditions are to provide water quality for it, which is enhanced, which we're doing with the bioretention. So everything that's pollution generating will go through that water quality and that bioretention. The remainder, you can see to the very west, there's a trench. So that's an underground buried trench that's rock for infiltration, and that only takes the roof areas, which are clean.
Okay, thank you.
But
Yeah.
all of it infiltrates.
And finally, to clarify that, the city does permit infiltration in this particular instance, is that
Yes,
correct?
Chair Sanford. So our stormwater engineer with the city responded to Sammamish Plateau, and they exchanged, I was on a couple emails back and forth, and it ended up with Sammamish Plateau being fine with what was proposed, and them and our stormwater engineer with what is proposed by the applicant, so.
Okay. Other comments, questions? Commissioner Morgan? Did you have one, Commissioner Morgan?
Yeah, I guess the question, if you can go back to the proposed changes to the,
And I guess, sorry, before your question, I'd also just draw your attention to, in the public comments, part of how we're addressing this isn't the final design. We would still have to go through another round of approval. And part of what the infiltration condition under, I believe it's 10, that's partially what it's there to address. But sorry.
okay. So could you pull up your changes again to?
Commissioner Morgan, you want to see the applicant's changes, the applicant recommended changes?
Correct.
Okay.
Sorry, give me one moment. Nope, that's the wrong one.
So the change would be that the wood chips, the maintenance of the trails stated as a maintenance agreement within the CCNRs. And if I understand right, you said it was 18340-060D?
Yes, I believe so.
So the recorded unit subdivision must include, and item 3 says joint use agreements and maintenance agreements as necessary.
Mhm.
So the recorded unit subdivision, so it, but you don't want it on the,
On the face of the plat.
plat
But so this would put a reference to the CCNR agreement for the maintenance on the face of the plat, just not specifically
What
this
it
condition.
states, yeah.
The one condition, yeah.
then of course for it, can the CCNRs be changed by the homeowners?
Yes, they can.
Okay. Are there, so theoretically, could the homeowners go in and change the CCNRs and say we don't have to maintain that trail anymore?
I believe they could. So part of this change is I believe we would still need to have everything that's within those CCNRs, especially if we have the wood chips for pedestrian pathway reference for that CCNR on the face of the plat,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
I guess so, but if it's referenced on the CCNR, but if they change the CCNR saying they don't need it anymore, then somebody could look at CCNR and say, we don't have to do that anymore.
There is some potential for that.
Yeah. Is there a way to force something to remain in a CCNR?
Yes, I don't know off the top of my head exactly how we would continue that, but this would still be, as
Yeah.
proposed, this is still going to be part of the conditions for development, so we need to have that within the CCNRs when we
Yeah.
draw them up.
Yeah, curious if there's a way to state that there's some parts of a CCNR that could not be changed by homeowners. I don't know.
Mr. Chair, can I have a follow-up question on?
Commissioner Brennan?
Can you talk a little bit more about what the concern is? I mean, ongoing maintenance is the requirement.
Yes.
And, you know, it's not an onerous requirement.
No.
So I'm trying to understand what the concern is to have that condition, which is specified in the code, stated on the plat.
Yeah. So the concern there is that if we need to transition away from that on the property at any point in time after this, you would need to do a plat amendment, which is a very onerous and complicated process. We just kind of want to avoid that for the future property owners. We have no issue with this condition. We just want to make sure that the plat is clean once it's approved.
So my understanding, following up to Commissioner Morgan's question about CCNRs, is that is really in the control of the homeowners. The city doesn't have a role once in the process of creation and/or future amendment. So this amendment would take the city out of the loop if there was a future amendment to the CCNR that changed that condition.
Yes, that is correct. And again, these are our proposed changes.
I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wonder if there could be a separate maintenance agreement, not in the CCRs, that does specify this requirement that is not and referred to from the surface of the plat.
That is also possible, and the applicant would be agreeable to such a thing. We'd have to discuss with the city, of course, but.
Any other questions for applicant?
Commissioner, does this,
Commissioner Arcado?
the extent of the questions here or the presentation, it doesn't get further into the design?
You can ask either now, and we'll have another opportunity during deliberation, Commissioner, so you could do questions now or later.
I just have a general question about parking. You know, when people have guests over, you've only got maybe two spots in the driveway, probably taken up by your personal vehicle. Where are the guests going to park? And are they allowed to park along Front Street?
Sorry,
yeah.
would you?
So technically, we have 3 parking spots, 1 on the driveway and 2 inside the building. Inside the building, there would be tandem parkings. So each building has 2 parkings inside the building at the first floor, the ground floor, and there is driveway, which would be available for any guest.
And then a follow-up is there an ADA requirement for like a specific ADA spot?
We did not receive any requirements for the ADA.
Yeah, realizing
Spot.
this is in a public space, so I'm not sure it's a requirement or not.
Don't believe so, but at building permit, our building plans examiner will review for ADA requirements.
And then this is kind of directed to civil also. I assume that trash pickup and fire truck turnarounds have all been accounted for?
Trash cans will be placed inside the building. There's a designated area, and during the days that needs to be picked up, they will be brought up on the street and then taken inside the garage. So we have designated area at the back side of the, once you get inside the garage, it's gonna be on the back, so that's where they're gonna keep it.
I guess I'm just thinking from the trash pickup companies.
Sure. So the fire truck turnaround's
Yeah.
in the plan set, and then we require Recology to sign off on the plan set, and they do that during the construction permitting. So we have a form that Recology has to approve and sign off on.
Then getting back to the stormwater, is there a requirement with the city as far as capacity? I mean, if it's a 10-year storm, or is it a 25-year? Then if it does exceed that, I assume just overland flows to the creek below, or that drainage area to the east.
Correct. The city has requirements for flow control that are in the DOE manual as well as their addendum to the stormwater manual. Flow control, technically you have to do from half the two-year peak to the 50-year is what you have to meet pre-existing conditions on. In this case, we're fully infiltrating, so we have soils conducive to infiltration. So we expect everything would fully infiltrate, but if something didn't, like you said, it would continue, and I get my directions mixed up, but toward the railroad tracks, it would flow that way if some, but we don't expect it would. We're expecting it to fully infiltrate given the rates.
I did notice that you had a very low water table, so you're probably right. There was a comment about an adjacent property with settlement issues. I noticed that the geotech report only had an anticipated settlement of a half an inch.
That's kind of outside of my expertise, so I probably would have to point you back to the geotech report.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions, applicant? I have one, I think I'll get into it at this time instead of saving all these for later. Mr. Hussein maybe may be the most appropriate for this. I'm looking at sheet 2. I'm sorry, applicant sheet A2 in the packet. The building A west elevation. If we could pull that one up. So this would be the elevation that faces Front Street from the first building. Okay. Right, and looking at the west there, yeah, the Front Street facing, that's lower right, I guess, yeah. So I guess my questions are trying to get to your sense of the practicality of these things. Are there any accent colors used in this design? I know you're restricted to 3 primary colors, but did you consider any accent colors for the design?
I think it would be best if my architect answered your questions, which we have him available online.
Okay, fine.
Mr. Travis.
Yeah, my questions will be in the same general
Yeah.
area.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, do I need to be sworn in for this?
Yes, please state your name.
Travis McDonald.
And you swear by oath or affirmation the testimony you're about to provide is true?
I do.
Yes, thank you. Please go ahead.
And Travis, excuse me, I have made you a panelist now, so if you'd like, you can turn your camera on as well.
Oh, okay. There we go. You're correct. Accent colors are permitted in the Old Town Overlay District here. We did not propose any strong accent colors for this project, though. We kind of wanted to keep this a little bit toned down, go with warm, neutral earth tones for the 3 primary body colors, and use kind of a dark charcoaly color for our trim.
And looking at the top windows there in the portion to the right, are those undivided windows? They appear to be those top 2 windows on the right side.
Correct, yeah. All our windows are proposed currently without simulated divided lights in them.
Okay, did you consider division for those windows, or would there be a problem with that?
We can certainly consider it. This is just my opinion, but oftentimes those tend to look a little dated. But we could certainly consider it and see how that might affect this elevation.
Okay, and I don't know if this is the best sheet, maybe sheet C1. It shows details of the entrances. We see at B, there's a 21-inch high concrete seal wall that appears on most of the units that are inward facing. Is that same wall used on the west end and the east end of these two buildings, or is that same wall there or not?
It is not. It is only for the private drive-facing entryways. These ones have a different set of features. This one, the entryway for this street-facing unit here is lined with landscaping, landscape borders.
Right, and those are all shrubs, correct? There are no trees in that lining.
Correct.
I think.
Yes.
Did you consider using that 21-inch seal wall as an opportunity for more variety as well as unity with the rest of the design?
We did not. We wanted to maintain as a direct pedestrian pathway to this entryway as possible for just for visibility to the entryway. So to incorporate a seat wall like that potentially would have had us offset the entry or offset the pathway, I should say. So it seemed that the landscape border was the preferred option for these, just given their street-facing nature.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had about that. Thanks.
Okay.
Any others?
Since we have the
Commissioner
architect, since we have the architect, I'm just curious on that same, I guess if you, Emily, if you could scroll to the left a bit, showing the, yeah, so that, I think, no, down below, yeah, I guess the rear elevation for those units, it just sort of jumps out at me, those, the lighter colored, two-story tall sections of the building. They seem like a very tall, light colored with nothing there. And did you consider the possibility of some kind of band within there to break up that elevation?
That could be possible. We tried to be a little lean towards the modest side since this is the rear elevation. It is
Yeah,
heavily screened from adjacent properties with dense proposed landscaping along the property line. So again, we're trying to be modest with our treatment back here. Additional banding could be a way to further break those up, but
okay.
we weren't sure it was necessary.
I don't think it's necessary because of all the landscaping to be there, but it's, I guess, at least a suggestion for considerations. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Yes.
Other questions for applicant? Hearing none, thank you. Now we'll move into the public comment portion of the hearing. Ms. Jackson, has anyone signed up to comment on this topic?
No, Chair.
And no commenters signed up online either?
No, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we can skip the rebuttal section. The applicant has no rebuttal to the comments that were not made. So, Commissioners, are there any objections to closing the public hearing at this point? Hearing no objections, I'll now close the public hearing at 7:21 p.m. So now it's time to move on to deliberation portion of the meeting. But first, we need to make a motion. Is there a motion on the item before the commission?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Brennan.
I move that the Development Commission approve the preliminary plat and the site development permit for Madison Lane Townhomes, numbers PP 2400001 and SDP 2400008, as described and evaluated in the staff report dated February 26, 2025, with exhibits A through U, subject to, with the conditions therein, with amendments to conditions 5 and 12 as provided in tonight's staff presentation. I also move that the Development Commission direct the Community Planning and Development Department to prepare findings of fact and conclusions for the review and approval by the Development Commission Chairman, affirming the Development Commission decision to approve the Madison Lane Townhomes approval numbers PP 2400001 and SDP 2400008, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report dated February 26, 2025, with exhibits A through U, subject to the conditions herein as, with the amendments to conditions 5 and 12 as provided in tonight's staff presentation. And as further amended tonight if changes are made during deliberations.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
Thank you. Is there discussion of the motion?
Emily, could you pull up the revised amendment or revised conditions?
Yes.
So I guess the question of the revision that the applicant had for condition 5.
I feel it should remain on the plat, per the code.
Commissioner Brennan?
I understand the concern expressed by the applicant regarding having something on the plat, because that is a fairly arduous process to go through, especially when you've got multiple owners, once this project is completed. But that being said, the language of the code is fairly specific here too regarding maintenance agreements being stated on the face of recorded documents or recorded plats. I guess my concern is I guess I had 2 points. One that I made earlier is I don't think this is an onerous condition, and I don't know that it would change into the future much. I think this would be a fairly simple thing to do over time. And this is going to be a fairly stable development from what I can see. And the city's out of the loop if the condition is just recorded as part of the CCNR. So I would agree with the condition as drafted by staff.
And yeah,
Commissioner Morgan?
I'm sorry. I think I would agree the same thing. And reading the language says a recorded unit lot subdivision must include maintenance agreements as necessary. And I just have a hard time figuring out how you work around that language. So I would agree that it should stay as stated.
Should we have a motion to affirm the condition as stated?
Mr. Chair, the motion included the staff proposed amendments to the
Yes.
conditions, so it's
Yes.
already in the motion.
We've already covered it.
Yeah, thank you.
Other comments? I had a question, I guess, for staff, this would be. Looking at the Transpo Group peer review approval letter, that's page 71 of 1043. Great, yes, thanks. So it says, we request the applicant provide a site distance analysis of the driveway as part of their site plan application. So my question is that represented as the site triangle that we see on sheet C2.00 and others? Or do we need a condition for this?
I believe it is shown through that.
Okay, and so the site triangle covers this request?
Site
is that-
distance, correct.
Site distance triangle
Yeah, and that
covers
was reviewed by our CPD engineer.
Okay, thank you. And then I have another on code 18.700.100, windows and doors for multifamily.
Right. $18,700, what was the rest of that? Chair?
700, 100, 18,700, 100.
All right. Do you want me to share that on the screen?
Yeah, please. I think that's right. Hope it is. I'm looking at B4. Undivided windows, right. Divided windows must be used as appropriate to the architectural style of the building. So, as I asked before, I'm kind of looking for opportunities to add some detail to the front street facing facade there. I wonder how we, did staff, first of all, consider this requirement? And I wonder how we interpret as appropriate. Would one divided window on the site be appropriate, or how do we meet the intent of this?
Sure. Staff concluded that it complied as there was divided windows provided with the development, but of course, when it comes to design, there, in some of our design standards, there is some ambiguity to what exactly that means as appropriate. So the commission is always welcome and able to add a condition if you would like to see more divided windows added to the development.
Thank you. And I guess, Commission, I'm having a little trouble with the west end of Building A, and it's facing on Front Street and the sidewalk there, and I'm wondering about whether we've met the requirement for an engaging and interesting side to the street there. So the intent, I think, is development should display an appealing, visually engaging street edge on all sides that face streets, avoiding a backside appearance. So I'm looking at anything we could do there. Wonder what your opinion is on dividing some of those windows there, especially the ones, the two upper windows. It's the one on the bottom right there, yeah. Commissioner Morgan.
I guess what does stand out to me is not necessarily the divided windows, but there's a fairly good-sized blank wall portion below the two upper windows and the lower to the right. If there was another window added in that area, would that meet the requirement?
Well, you know, I think the requirement as written could have two interpretations. That I believe the requirement said that structures must have divided windows as appropriate, and the decision is made as appropriate to the architecture, right? So it doesn't necessarily say that divided windows will not be used. It says simply that they're used in a way that's appropriate to the design.
Yeah.
So I personally would like to see a bit more variety in that side, and I wonder if anybody else had that sense. Or, and yeah, I agree about the blank space there. However, it's less than 30 feet, right? That blank wall. Commissioner Price.
Well, I would have two comments. I guess the first is this engaging, and is there visual interest for this facade facing this elevation? You know, arguably, you don't experience the world in elevation. You're going to be driving or walking by this, and I think they did a good job of how they designed the front, the back, and this facade. So you're going to see that first third of the building as you pass, and then this elevation, and then coming the other way, you'll see the back. You know, you experience the world in 3D. So I think in if you look at it in that context, I think it does a good job and achieves. So, and then, are the windows appropriate to the style? That's a function of what style is this building. This is a, I don't know. It's a quasi-traditional, leaning to contemporary. It's a quilt work of styles that is very code-driven, has pushed most buildings to look like this. And I don't know if that's the desired outcome. I don't think it's an unattractive building, but it's not a traditional building in the true traditional sense. It doesn't fall under any of the other categories that we sometimes engage, which is it arts and crafts? Is it craftsman? Is it Grange? There's no style required here. So therefore, I think it's kind of up to them to a degree. I think it does a good job of meeting the Old Town standards, but I don't feel like it needs to go as far as having divided lights. I would also say, and this is more of my pessimistic view, is that buildings of this quality aren't going to have windows of a certain quality that have nice looking divided lights. They're not going to look that good. So I would, in my opinion, I think this is fine.
Any other comments?
This is why I don't
Commissioner
comment on
Taylor.
architecture.
Commissioner Brennan?
Mr. Chair, just a quick comment. Kind of leaning to Commissioner Price did a nice job of providing a characterization of what the experience will be like. I don't know that divided windows would make a significant difference one way or the other in this particular elevation of those two upper windows. So I'm satisfied with the design as presented. Understand the interest in trying to break this up a little bit, but you're going to see more than just this elevation as you're looking at this development. So I'm comfortable with this. Thank you.
Okay, good. And I think that the trees and the landscaping are a really strong feature of this design, and you'll see a lot of that in this design, so that helps as well. Any other discussion, comments? Commissioner Cato?
I have a question for staff. On the transportation study, it noted 77 trips, and it didn't require a traffic study. What number of trips would drive a traffic study? That was under the Kimberly Horn or Kimley Horn document.
Give me 1 second to pull up what you're looking at so I can make sure I'm on the same page. So the traffic study, or excuse me, our traffic impact analysis, when you have to go from a traffic memo to a full-blown traffic impact analysis, I believe is driven by PM peak hour trips versus total new trips, if I'm correct, yeah. So since it's only 6 new PM peak hour trips, it didn't trigger the need for a full-blown traffic impact analysis.
Is there a number though that I could?
There is a number. I want to say it's 30. I want to say it's 30. I am happy to ask our traffic engineer and email you the answer to that one.
I thought if it was 8, there might be.
I believe it's higher than that.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Brennan?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. So we did on traffic. So we did receive comments, and most of the comments from the public were related to, traffic on Front Street. And, what's the city doing to provide some relief? Is there anything that you can tell us this evening that would kind of respond to what the city is doing to provide some relief on Front Street?
Sure. I can shed some light on how we go about this, and I'll let Kristen jump in if she has more to add to it. So essentially, when any new development, redevelopment, or change in use comes into the city, we require they submit for what we call a transportation concurrency application, and that's the transportation concurrency certificate. That's one of the exhibits. So that con permit has to come in with the development application, and when that comes in, it's has the ITE manual, the traffic manual of the different types of uses, and they fill out how many new PM peak hour trips are being generated by this use. And then the city has what we call a trip bank, which has all of the available number of trips. We have a trip bank for central Issaquah and a trip bank for areas outside of central Issaquah and a trip bank for our DAs separately, I believe. So then those trips are deducted from the trip bank. And the trip bank makes sure that our streets don't fall below level of service standards, which for the citywide is a level of service D. That's our required level of service standards, with a couple intersections are allowed to fall a little bit more below that. That's in our code. So there has to be enough trips. If there's not enough trips, you don't get your development. So that's essentially the conclusion here is there was enough trips in the trip bank for them to be issued their transportation certificate, which means that this development is not going to cause the impacted streets and intersections to fall below the city's standard level of service.
Great. Thanks for that. And I do just, bigger picture, there's a significant project underway out in, at the interchange of Highway 18, and a lot of the trips coming through Issaquah along Front Street and out Hobart Road are heading toward Highway 18. So I know the city, the mayor, and council members were very active in getting that project funded, and so hopefully that will provide some noticeable relief when that is completed in the next year or so. But yeah, transportation is the focal point for just about every development, I think, that comes before the commission and probably before in front of the staff. So thanks for the information. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Commissioner and staff. I think it's important to have that as part of the record. Thanks. Any other discussion regarding the main motion? Commissioner Morgan. Hearing no further discussion, with deliberation concluded, it's time for the commission to take action on the item before us. And we're voting on the main motion. To remind us, as Commissioner Brennan stated, we're not going to force him to restate the entire long motion, but I think we're clear what we're voting on. All in favor of the main motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion is approved unanimously. This concludes the Madison Lane Townhomes preliminary plat and site development permit. Notice of decision will be issued by staff within 7 days. Moving on to City Council updates, I'd like the staff to provide any updates on City Council activities.
I don't have any updates for you tonight.
Oh, okay, too bad. We have all this time and no updates. Are there any other items of business or announcements from staff? Okay, thank you. Thanks to staff and the applicant, and there being no further business before the commission, I adjourn the meeting at 7:39 p.m.